So thank you for the pineapple. As you have seen the agenda, there are two names of the presenters. I can assure you that I'm not the Katharina Schleidt, which is sitting over there. I'm the second presenter. And we have divided the two presentations that we are dealing with because they are both touching exactly the same issue, which is related to the environmental monitoring facilities, as you can see. This presentation is the first one and is the general one, just providing the concept, providing the basic rules, how to deal with the observations and measurements, and all the things related to environmental monitoring facilities. While the second one will be some explicit example from the air quality domain. So just to move further, as you can see, that the scope is the only one thing that I will read in this presentation, and is the location and operation of environmental monitoring facilities, including observation and measurement of emissions, of the state of environment media, and of other ecosystems parameters by public or on behalf of public authorities. So, as you can see from the scope itself, it's really a general one thematic working group, general one data specification, providing the concept for other fields, for other thematic domains, and for that reason it's a really cross-cutting thematical area, which varies from survey and sampling on one hand to some campaigns from satellites. And so for that reason the model is quite simple from one point of view, and also gives some freedom to the domains to really modify and to customize the model itself according to the needs that are within the domain for the measurements and for the observations. So there are several typical applications, and as I have noticed, the first one will be presented in the later section by Katharina Schleidt. We have two basic directions. The first one is the environmental monitoring facility itself, which means some background information about it, where it is localized, what kind of data it can measure, for example, who is the maintainer of that environmental monitoring facility, and so on. The second part, the second direction, is the observation and the measurements that are taken within this facility, so I mean the data itself. And so for that reason, we are tightly connected to the state-of-the-art standards, especially with this one. ISO 19156 is, as you I suppose know, primarily the OGC initiative, which has been later taken under the ISO umbrella, and so for that reason it's really an ISO standard, one of the most recent one in the geoinformation community. And this concept, defined by both, by the environmental monitoring facility itself and the observation and measurements, is reused in several domains. So far, it's those that are mentioned in the bottom of this slide. We have defined several use cases. So first one is absolutely obvious, to find environmental monitoring facilities for a given area, for the area of interest. Then the second one is the second logical step in this chain, which is to access the background information behind the monitoring feature. The third one is, well, the third, fourth, and the fifth one are exactly the same or very similar one, which is providing the information on the environmental monitoring facility. And it differs whether it is fixed one, whether it is a mobile one, or whether it's really the area when the sampling feature has been taken. And the last two use cases are tightly connected exactly with the scope of this workshop. That means the reporting monitoring features and also the reporting monitoring features and observation and measurement. So the latter one is dealing with the ISO standard. If we look on the EF data model, it's that part. And to ease that and to bring some illustration and example, we've got several levels. The first one level is the environmental monitoring facility, which is the facility itself, as I have mentioned, the location, what it is, some background information. Then we got some real data that is taking on that place, And this is covered by several concepts. One of them is the ISO 19156, the observations and measurements. And of course, we are using and following the generic conceptual model on one hand, and on the other hand, there's a very specific document related to the generic conceptual model, which is a designation D2.9, and it is dealing with the Inspire O&M classes. So we haven't accepted the O&M standard as it is. We have created a modification, let's say some specialization for the Inspire purposes. And of course, there are some common data types. If we look on the first part, as I have presented in the previous slide, which means the environmental monitoring facility itself, then we got two basic things. First one is the abstraction, is the abstract monitoring feature, and its specialization is the facilities and the networks. Because usually you don't have just one facility, but they are connected into the networks of facilities that are measuring for various locations within the specific area. And from the reporting point of view, this is one of the crucial things, one of the crucial feature types, because the feature type, because this feature type contains link to a data type report to legal act, and this report to legal act has one attribute, which is the legal act itself. You can see that the data type is the legislation reference, and the legislation reference, if you are familiar with the ISO 19115, the metadata concept, it's just a modified or customized CI citation. So here you can claim what exactly legal act you are referring to, which means also the version, of course the name of the legal act, and some other details. Then if we move a little bit forward, we have also one part which is the observing capability within the environmental monitoring facility, and this observing capability is one of the connection points that are referring to the observations and measurements, the ISO 19156 standard. And this is just the feature type, so you can see that it's the time when the observing has been taken. You have some code list, and especially you get the connection, the possibility to connect to the observations and measurements. Following the common structure of this presentation, here is the list of relevant reporting obligations. Of course, as in the case of Michael, there are not all of them, but the first one, just to give an overview that what we are dealing on the generic, on the conceptual level, and of course there are many other which are mandated by the really other thematic working groups, and those thematic working groups are modifying and applying that standard or that model for their domains. So this is briefly just for the introduction to the environmental monitoring facilities, and I would like to thank you for your participation in this workshop.